Hello, I'm Kieran Kapoor of the Cambridge Marketing College. I'm at the Imperial War Museum at Duxford, venue for the Cambridge Digital Marketing Conference. And my guest this week is Mike Berry of Mike Berry Associates. Mike, welcome.
Thank you.
You've just finished your talk and you were talking about the best global digital marketing, and you've done 2 books in this area.
Correct.
So tell me about how the books came about.
Well, there are a lot of books about digital marketing and some excellent textbooks which are used by CIM and other organisations. And it was my view that although I wanted to write a book, that market was crowded. So with my partners, we decided we'd do something different, and we collected some case studies from all around the world which we thought showed the best of global digital marketing. And that was book 1, and that was back in, I think, 2014. And it was so successful that we decided to do another one with completely new case studies, up to date, and that was book 2. And again, that's been successful, so the odds are there'll be a third one. But the idea is that we feature all sorts of different work from different countries, different cultures, not necessarily big famous global brands, but small and big companies, but always with something that we feel could be generally interesting and useful, and that people would have lessons to learn from. And that's been the formula, and it seems to be a winning one, so we're going to continue, I think.
And you do take case studies from all sorts of industries, don't you, from around
yes,
the world?
Yes, indeed. Well, very generally B2B, B2C, not-for-profit, governmental, and other kind of broad categories. But within that, we try and do financial services, FMCG, hotel, leisure, etc., etc. So as far as possible, something for everyone. And, if you're working in a very specific sector, I would suggest it's always worth looking at work that's done in a different sector in case there are any lessons that can be learned, and there's a lot of cross-fertilisation possible. And I also think a lot of these campaigns happen to be done in one country, but that really was a coincidence. It was just the way it worked out. Someone in a creative agency in Bangkok or Munich or London or New York had this idea, and their client had a budget to do activity in that country, so that's what happened. But very often it's not a particularly culturally sensitive thing that would only work in one country. It's something that I think a lot of people anywhere in the world can learn from.
So how did you define the best of? What were you meaning by the best?
Well, of course, objective measurement is impossible, and there's probably quite a lot of digital marketing that most of us never hear about. So it's no coincidence that most of these campaigns that we've chosen are award winners, because if you consider the situation, someone has put this work forward for an award, which generally the agency is the most enthusiastic party about, because it's good for agencies to win awards and to be seen to be winning awards. And their clients perhaps would be interested as well, but not so interested. But in the case of a campaign which has won an award, the client must at some time have been involved. In other words, to agree that it can be entered, to sign off the publication of certain results. And by that time, everyone involved is quite happy to talk about it. So you can see that you're pushing on an open door if you're trying to compile some really successful digital marketing case studies, compared with something that's been fantastically successful but is still hush-hush and no one wants to talk about it. So that would be too much like hard work. So we've gone for the big famous ones, not necessarily gold award winners. We will try and apply judgment, and if something got a bronze or a silver award, it could be just as good for us as editors, as curators, as something that's won all the gold awards in sight. So we haven't mindlessly chosen all the most famous campaigns.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the examples. So, and these are ones coming for your upcoming book, and one of them I know was Toyota and the Lexus.
Yes, and this is from the US, and it's almost that you discriminate against the US because there's so much digital marketing work being done there. You look for unusual, smaller markets. But I think it's good to feature the US. There are a lot of very talented marketing people working in America, and a lot of very good digital people, not only in Silicon Valley, but in all different cities in the US, including in agencies. And the Lexus campaign was to promote the NX, which is they called it a luxury SUV, so it's a sort of crossover vehicle. But the idea is that this audience is urban and they're very discriminating, and they need to believe that this is absolutely the car for them. And remember, Lexus is the luxury arm of Toyota, so it's not a cheap vehicle. And this was a very successful campaign which featured video, but not as we know it in terms of, a traditional car launch has got a lot of TV, normally one campaign which is just played over and over again, possibly 2 or 3 executions, but very much, broad brush, one size fits all. This was Facebook, it was video, and it was customized video. So they did something really clever, which was combining different factors into a very personalised video communication.
That's interesting. So it's a luxury car, and it's an SUV, so it's a particular size of car, but they're aiming it via Facebook.
Yes, indeed. And equally, I think there's a kind of trend at the moment, particularly in the US and Europe in marketing circles, to say, well, Facebook's getting on a bit now, and the coolest stuff's happening on Snapchat or WhatsApp or Instagram. And if you just look at the numbers, the people that could afford to buy this car and might be susceptible to a message were Facebook people. They were on Facebook. And we know that video is very powerful and getting more so. And of course, we can now watch video almost anywhere on our mobile devices, which wasn't really possible even 10 years ago. So this was a really clever use of some of the Facebook video capabilities to do a very personalized campaign. So with the different elements, they combined it into what I would call personalized video advertising. And that's got all the power of TV, but actually with the added benefit of targeting. And Facebook just happened to be the best way of getting that message in front of these people.
Okay, I know one of the other examples that caught my eye was the World Wildlife Fund. Now that's quite a different audience, presumably.
Absolutely, even more different. This was in Belgium. And again, why Belgium? Because that's where it was done. The creative people in the agency in Belgium had this idea. And the campaign had a name, and I think that's an interesting trend that we're seeing, that people are naming campaigns, and that could be part of winning an award to give it some sort of identity, which of course isn't at all relevant to the consumer. But this one was called Families on the Verge of Extinction. And the central creative idea was that the tigers of this world, I think there are somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 left alive on the planet, and that's an amazingly low number when you consider how many there must have used to have been. And why Belgium, again, just happened to be there, but they were trying to get people in Belgium to give funds they were fundraising for WWF in Belgium, and they decided, okay, let's try and open hearts and purses and wallets on the basis of the endangered family of tigers. But the, for me, brilliant creative idea was, okay, there are also people in every country, including Belgium, who have a surname which may one day die out. So the last name, if your second name is unusual, are you an endangered species as well? So your family might be on the verge of extinction. Obviously not physically, but sooner or later that name may disappear from the phone book, from the electoral roll. So they built a tool, the agency and the client, the WWF in Belgium, built a tool by which online you could check how many people there were left in your country with that name. And I guess if it was equivalent to Smith or Jones, there was no problem. But the clever thing for me was that got people thinking, oh yeah, well my name is fairly common, I wonder how common compared with others. But also I know someone with a very unusual name, and that could be your girlfriend, boyfriend, your ex, your teacher, your work colleagues. And there was a human element to it, which I think is a very, very powerful creative idea.
And it's interesting that they didn't just go for the big fluffy tiger and have a tiger toy or anything like that. They went for something quite different.
Yeah, indeed, very obscure, and I can imagine it was an interesting meeting when the idea was first proposed to WWF. Of course, I should explain that as soon as you check your name, you have an opportunity to donate.
Yeah. Okay,
and it's a kind of quid pro quo. We've told you something interesting. Now look, here's another family on the verge of extinction. There may be only 4 or 5 of you, but look, the tigers are in danger as well. And, the choice of tiger, you could say, is rather arbitrary. It could be pandas or dolphins or something else. But they went for tiger, and of course beautiful imagery around the wild tiger and fantastic video footage, etc. And it's just a very strange but surprisingly effective campaign that they also got a lot of PR around this, because famous Belgians with unusual names got into it and thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. We're a family on the verge of extinction. And, there's obviously no physical threat to those families, but it's just a thought, okay, maybe one day if we're not careful, the tigers will die out, and let's give some money to try and preserve their habitats, etc.
And I know one of the other ones you talked about was Public Health England, which was something else where you wanted people to put something in, or it was an app they could use?
Yes, and the UK government, it's complicated because this is part of the Department of Health, and this is England rather than any other country. So it's called Public Health England, this body. And yeah, their message is eat less sugar. And they did a lot of research to show that British people are eating large amounts of sugar, often without even realising it. The point was that you're buying sugar in products without knowing it, which are added by the manufacturer and effectively condoned by the retailer, and parents are filling their children with sugar without being aware of it, and perhaps in many cases ignorance as to how much sugar there actually is in certain products.
So what did they ask you to do? What did it
Yeah,
generate?
well, it was via a partnership with My Supermarket for online shopping, and they call this tool the sugar accumulator. So as you added items to your basket, you got a traffic light type system of how much sugar you were adding, and it was accumulating. So by the time you got to the checkout, you were carrying a bag of sugar effectively. But also, very interestingly, it suggested healthier alternatives.
And on that slightly scary note of just how much sugar might be in your shopping, Mike Berry, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.